Malcolm Gladwell shared an idea about education that completely changed the way I think about autism. Because sometimes the problem isn't your child's ability, it's who they're comparing themselves to. Gladwell argues that where a child sits in the classroom quietly shapes how they think about themselves. And when I heard that, I couldn't stop thinking about autistic kids. Because many kids on the spectrum, they don't just struggle with school. They spend years feeling like they're at the bottom, not just academically, but socially and emotionally. Like no matter how hard they try, they just can't catch up. And that changes more than grades. It changes identity. Today, I want to share what Gladwell taught me and why it might completely change how you see autism and education. Hey, I'm Genevieve, mom raising an amazing child on the spectrum. If you're new here, welcome. If you're raising an autistic child, you already know that school isn't just about academics. It's about, will my child feel safe here? Will they make friends? Will they feel capable? And at the end of the day, will they like learning? Today, I want to share something that completely changed how I think about all of that. When my child was younger, school, it felt like a constant comparison loop. Every meeting felt like my child just wasn't measuring up. All the kids were reading, my child wasn't there yet. All the kids were joining group activities, we weren't doing that yet. All the kids were moving through milestones. We were working really hard just to keep up. And I remember thinking, I don't know if we're falling behind or if we're running a completely different race. But at the time, it didn't feel like a completely different race. It felt like we were losing. That's when I came across something that Malcolm Gladwell discusses on his work on education. It's a simple, but it's a powerful idea. Imagine two equally capable students, one near the bottom of a highly competitive school and the other at the top of a classroom that the pace fits the student well. In this case, who feels smarter? Who is more likely to take a risk? Who is more likely to volunteer their hand to answer a question? And who believes that they can improve? We all assume that the better school creates the better outcome, but actually the opposite is true. Because confidence, it doesn't come from being surrounded by the strongest students. It comes from experiencing success. And that idea completely reframed what I was seeing in my own home. Because autistic kids often grow up receiving a message that often isn't spoken out loud, but is often felt. You're behind, you need support, you need help. You're not quite there yet. Now, support matters and accommodations, they matter deeply, but that's not the issue. The issue is what a child starts to believe about themselves in the process. That maybe they are less than, not different, but behind. And when that belief settles in, anxiety grows and confidence shrinks. And learning, it becomes harder than it needs to be. I wanted to give an example as to how this related to my family. When my child was first diagnosed autistic, we were in the public school system. And at the time, everything was going fairly well, or so I thought. Academics, we were managing them to some extent. My child was making friends. They were being invited to birthday parties, and everything seemed to be going okay. But what I didn't realize is that something was quietly happening. My child started comparing themselves to neurotypical peers, and there ended up being this comparison loop as though they weren't good enough. And this started to show up very gradually until over time, my child was really stressed and didn't want to go to school. Drop-offs were such a nightmare. They weren't sleeping and things became really challenging. So what did we do? We made a change. And honestly, at the time, it wasn't an easy change because I thought keeping my child in this public system where kids are learning and growing would be best for them. What I didn't realize is that they were comparing themselves to these kids every day. So our change was to move our child to a school with neurodivergent kids. And within months, I started to see a different version of my child. Not because my child had changed, but because the environment had changed. The anxiety that used to show up in the morning, it started to fade. Drop-offs became easier. My child started to sleep. And slowly, something important started to come back, confidence. And with confidence, my child was able to focus. They were able to learn and grow and develop. And it wasn't that my child suddenly became more capable. They were always capable. They were just put into the environment that allowed them to flourish. So as autism parents, what do we do with this? First, we stop comparing our autistic kids to neurotypical timelines or milestones. Autistic kids develop, learn, and grow on their own timeline. Second, look for where your child feels successful, not just where they struggle. Every child needs to feel competent, needs to feel proud of themselves. Competence builds confidence. And third, protect confidence as carefully as you would protect any other part of your child's education or any other part of your child. Because confidence, it isn't extra. It's the foundation that everything else is built on. A child who believes that they can will continue to learn and grow. A child who believes that they're not good enough will shut down. The biggest thing I took away from Malcolm Gladwell's idea wasn't about intelligence. It was about environment. That environment not only shapes performance, it shapes identity. And for autistic kids or kids on the spectrum, that's everything. Our goal as autism parents isn't to raise kids that constantly feel compared. It's to raise autistic kids that feel confident in who they are, capable of their abilities, and know what their strengths are. And also know that they're not defined by where they sit in a classroom. Maybe that's why one of my biggest goals or dreams is to create a school for autistic kids. One where they're not comparing themselves to their neurotypical peers, where they're able to learn and grow at their own pace, build confidence, discover what they're capable of, because once confidence grows, anything becomes possible. I'd really love to hear from you. Is there a time where your autistic child's confidence changed because of the environment that they were in? Comment below. I'd love to hear your story. And if you're currently navigating school and school decisions, I made a whole video on the types of schools available for autistic kids. I'll link it up above. And I just want you to know that you're not alone in this, and neither is your child. I'll see you next week on the Autism Parent Guide.